morning, everyone. Welcome to the February 2nd meeting of the Respiratory Care Board. I want to welcome everyone, guests, practitioners, students, and interested parties to this meeting. One of the things that's very important for the Respiratory Care Board is to get feedback from its members and people who are concerned about the respiratory care profession. So I welcome everyone here. I have some information that I have to disseminate about public comment, and I will make that statement now, and then I will call the meeting to order. Public comment will be allowed on agenda items, as these items are taken up by the board during the meeting. Under the Open Meetings Act, the board may not take any action on items raised by public comment that are not on the agenda, other than to decide whether to schedule that item for a future meeting. If you would like to provide a comment, it would be appreciated, though not required, if you would come forward and let us know your name, if applicable, the organization to which you are representing. In order to allow the board sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, public comment may be limited. If you are not recognized, please make sure you raise your hand and come forward and make your comment. Okay. All comments will be appreciated. Please do not repeat the comments of prior persons. If you want to make a comment and you want to agree or disagree with a comment, you can state that. I will call this meeting to order, and I will establish a quorum by going around the table and having everyone announce their membership relative to the board. Christine, start at your end.
Christine Molina, I am staff with the Respiratory Care Board. I will go ahead and read the names. Mary Ellen Early, here. Rebecca Franzoya, here. Mark Goldstein,
Here.
Michael Hardiman,
Right here.
Dr. Ronald Lewis,
Present.
Judy McKeever, here. Sam Kabushia,
Present.
Vice President Wagner,
Here.
and President Roth.
Here. You have a quorum. Okay. Again, I would like to thank Concord for hosting this meeting and for everyone here for the refreshments and the ability to have a large group of people attend this meeting. So thank you again to Concord. We appreciate it. I'd like to know if there are any comments of any person who would like to make a public comment prior to the items that are on the agenda in the general sense. Does anyone want to come forward? If not, I'll move on with approving the minutes of the October 13th meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 2nd, I'm sorry.
From October 13th.
From October 13th, excuse me.
Second.
Okay. So the meeting, the minutes, the measure has been put forward. It has been seconded. Now we will vote on to make sure. Christine?
Mary Ellen Early, here. Rebecca Franzoya. I'm sorry.
Any public comments? I'm sorry. About,
Sitting there, should I hit you?
right. You should sit closer and remind me. Any public comments about the meeting minutes of October 13th? Seeing none, we will go forward with the
Mary
vote.
Ellen Early. Rebecca Franzoya. Mark Goldstein.
Aye.
Michael Hardiman.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Abstain.
Judy McKeever.
Aye.
Sam Kabushia.
Aye.
Vice President Paul Wagner.
Aye.
And President Alan Roth.
Aye. The minutes have been approved. Okay. I'd like to welcome our Director of Consumer Affairs to come up and make his presentation.
Good morning, Respiratory Care Board of California. My name is Dean Raffilo. I am the now 11-month Director for the Department of Consumer Affairs. Apologize it's taken me that long to formally address this board. As I've mentioned in previous addresses, as soon as I'm able to figure out how to be at multiple places simultaneously, you folks will be the first to know. Nonetheless, again, thank you very much for having me here this morning. President Roth, Vice President Wagner, Executive Officer Nunez. Again, it is such a pleasure to be able to finally address this board. Let me say that I feel very fortunate these past 11 months that the work that I have been doing is directly in line with my core values, convictions, beliefs, specific to issues of equality, justice, fairness, and obviously in the vein specifically of consumer protections. Not only do I share these notions with you, but arguably the 38 programs under DCA and beyond. As a update, in terms of what has been going on most recently at the Department of Consumer Affairs, just earlier this week, the department held its directors' quarterly meeting with board executive officers, bureau chiefs, and board presidents. With 31 executive officers and bureau chiefs in attendance, we hope this meeting was a productive forum to discuss the important issues facing the department and its various boards and bureaus. In our perspective, this meeting was helpful in gaining your input regarding the department's strategic plan, including new activities in our legal, budget, and board and bureau services divisions. We look forward to continuing hosting these meetings and are grateful for your input and participation. Very briefly, I spoke with President Roth prior to the meeting, and he shared his interest in wanting to make sure that those meetings allow for a call-in option. Granted, sounds like many of you suffer from the same thing I do of being able to be at multiple places simultaneously. And we have gone back and forth in terms of having a call-in option. A lot of the feedback that we have been getting from attendees felt that maybe a call-in option shouldn't be made available, whether it was technical difficulties or just the difficulties of having kind of a fuller or robust conversation. But nonetheless, I remain open-minded on whether or not to have a call-in option, and I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that, President Roth. Specific to the DCA leadership training, the department's Future Leadership Development Program and its inaugural cohort continue to make successful steps forward. The FLD mentees, in addition to being paired with a mentor, are participating in special leadership development exercises, working on special projects that could positively impact DCA, developing new working relationships, and meeting with several executives who are sharing career advice. Earlier this week, the Future Leadership Development Program, which is about 12 to 15 individuals, were able to share an hour with Secretary Podesta. She is the Secretary for Business, Consumer Services, and Housing. That's the agency that the department is one of 9 departments under that agency. And again, we were able to get direct FaceTime with the Secretary, ask her about how she handles her role as the main leader for that agency, and naturally looking forward to that program continuing. Next week, they'll have the opportunity to have direct FaceTime with Appointment Secretary Lamona Pascal. And again, we're trying to expose as many of these future leaders to current leaders so that they can too learn and hear directly from them. Specific to our executive brown bags, Solid has conducted a series of gatherings with board executive officers, bureau chiefs, and DCA executives. These events provide a forum for transferring knowledge, building trust, and establishing network relationships. The next gathering will be on Wednesday, February 28th, and will include a presentation on employee engagement and a formal presentation on FLD's team projects. Specifically to required board member training, dates for the 2018 board member orientation training have been confirmed. The first one of the year is scheduled for March 21st. The next 3 will be on June 6th, September 18 and December 5th. Board members are required to complete this training within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to a board. This is a one-day training in Sacramento, which details the important functions and responsibilities of board members. Please contact DCA's Solid Team if you're interested in attending. Registration is also available online. I know you have a very, very busy agenda before you. I'm not going to take any more of your time. I want to sincerely and genuinely express my appreciation for not only your dedication to the Respiratory Care Board of California, but even beyond with the, as I mentioned earlier, the vision of creating stronger consumer protections for all Californians. I'm willing to entertain any questions you may have. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to address you all this morning.
I want to thank you for your service and your positive attitudes for the Department of Consumer Affairs and the activities to which you're moving the whole department forward, including the Respiratory Care Board. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Any questions from the audience for the director?
Thank you.
Very much. Any general statements or comments that anyone would like to make now before we move on to the next agenda item? Seeing that, yes.
I do agree that there needs to be
Come
some
forward,
type
please.
of, okay. Hi, my name is George Garcia. I'm a manager at Mission Hospital in Mission Viejo, California. And I just wanted to say that I do agree with the presentation that Dean Graffillo had regarding the ability to maybe have a way to call in and have a teleconference. I do know that I've wanted to attend these meetings in the past, but for whatever reason wasn't able to make it. And I think that would be a nice option for those that are interested in still participating to have a channel or a way for them to participate, such as maybe a teleconference.
This meeting is recorded, is also able to look at it live. You can look at it live. Yeah, webcast live.
Oh, okay, very good. So I appreciate that.
Which is something relatively new that concerns from the respiratory care community. We were able to arrange that, and I've had a lot of positive comments for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think it would be a good idea to do a teleconference where the people who are watching the webcast can call in. They just need to understand the protocol of how we're doing the meeting, but I think it would be a better way to get more input from more practitioners.
Any further comments? If seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 4. And I would like to have Dean Hernandez come up and make his presentation about right.
May I approach the things written? Again, my name is Ray Hernandez. I'm the Dean of Science, Math, and Technology over at Skyline College. And Skyline College is a community college that serves the Bay Area, and particularly San Francisco and northern San Mateo counties. Thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of what's happening with the community college system and the public system in terms of further education. So
while I'm representing Skyline College and speaking about that, I'll also be talking just a little bit about how this is really helping the profession move forward and setting the stage across the nation in terms of how we can build more capacity for that further education. So thank you, President Roth and Vice President Wagner and Executive Officer Nunez. As usual, in my hat as Dean, and also still connected to our respiratory care program, and I've been a practitioner now for 31 or 32 years now. I've been juggling hats, so just last night I sent Executive Officer Nunez the PowerPoint presentation. I didn't bring any copies today, and I know that most of you, as we're giving the presentation, is going to be hard to look, so just wanted to say that. So I mentioned Skyline College, and I'll talk a little bit about SB 850. The board did put the Legislative Analyst's Office report in the board packet, so it gives more information in terms of that perspective. Back in 2014, when, of course, the nation has been talking about the need for bachelor's degrees to meet the workforce needs across the nation, California and the community college system legislature really looked at the capacity of public education and how it could help. And one of the things that they found were the current four-year universities, CSUs and UCs, could not meet the demand. So they looked at the community colleges to see how that demand could be met. And SB 840 came in, I would say, in about 2013. And this is probably about the fourth generation of legislation that's come through, trying to create a pathway at the community college to allow for baccalaureate degrees. And most of it was in a nursing focus, and that's always been a political hot potato. So moving forward, the current legislation really looked at bachelor's degree pathways that are not being served by CSUs and UCs, and really looking at how we could capitalize on that. So moving forward, this last piece of legislation really came through because it did exclude nursing, because there are a lot of four-year programs at the open systems. All right. So we were one of 15 baccalaureate degrees that were granted. There are 2 in respiratory care, and about 40%, almost 50% of them are in healthcare. So really showing that need and trend for that piece. As we were writing the proposal, there was a request to have certain needs in that. And so one of them is to demonstrate the need for unmet workforce needs, that there would be no duplication to the CSU-UC systems. So as I said, Skyline College serves the Bay Area region. We ended up doing a study in contacting employers, and we contacted 90 institutions with 30 responses. And when we looked at the full Bay Area, we looked at there was a great need when we asked the question, what academic preparation do they feel for the practitioner of today is needed, and what would they prefer to hire? And you can see overwhelmingly the bachelor's degree pathway is what's being looked at. So we were able to meet that need in terms of that piece. As we move forward, the board asked for a few things here today. One is just to talk about the genesis of the degree, and so that's what I'm going to talk about for a little bit, and then talk about the student population, and then talk about what it is that we're looking at in this bachelor's path to further the education and training of our practitioners. So legislation came through, the 15 pilot programs were approved in January of 15, and we set out to do our work. And in that, we started with our associate degree program, which has been in existence since 1970, serving the Bay Area, and a very active and vibrant advisory committee. And so we took that piece, but we really opened it up to the whole region, and we had a series of 2 advisory committee meetings, which included the full region with current faculty and staff, students in the program, students in other programs, employers around the Bay Area, and educational facilities around the Bay Area. So we really had input from the broad lens there. And something interesting came about. There were essentially 2 tracks that were identified in terms of what would we want to see above the entry-level associate degree program. And one was, and we've heard this over and over, that the current 2-year programs really set students up with really a basis and really that first competence But once they get out, they need more education and training for direct care. So that was one track that we looked at. The second track was many of us, and if we look around the room, at least for those of us who have been practicing for at least a few years, we're looking at the retirement age moving forward, and in terms of leadership, in terms of specialty areas, we're going to see a lot of our colleagues leaving the industry. And in that, we're really looking at what do we need set up to move forward. And so what came out in that is leadership roles and specialty areas. So after a lot of discussion, we knew we couldn't provide both tracks at this point in time. And so the leadership track and the specialty area track was what came up for the bachelor's degree. Now, as I talk about this, and President Roth is going to talk about Modesto Junior College, we've been working together so that there is synergy and the curriculum is aligned between the two programs. And one of the things that we came up with was we have the opportunity to create curriculum that is has been identified by the industry and feedback from professional organizations so that it's creating a standard for California. So really our hope is, being a community college system, this is public domain, and that this information and this curriculum will be shared certainly across California and hopefully across the nation. So that's really our hope in this. Okay. What was great about this process too was those people who came to the advisory meetings really were extremely interested in being able to contribute and form this curriculum. And out of that, we were able to garner 30 members, educators, employers, graduates, lead experts, to develop the curriculum. So they weren't just faculty that we had employed in our college, but it was, again, a regional effort. And so we ended up creating these content areas in the major: case management, education, leadership, management, research, neonatal pediatrics. And as we went through the curriculum, we were trying to figure out how do we define the difference between an associate degree curriculum and a bachelor's degree, lower division versus upper division. And we came up with in the curriculum, and again, consulting with our CSU partners, what that included. So a lot more levels of analyzing, synthesizing, construction. And in that, we really end up developing a project-based curriculum. And so that's really a key difference from the associate degree program, at least that we currently offer at Skyline College. We received feedback as we moved through that from local, regional, and state organizations. So again, we felt it was very comprehensive and that this wasn't built in a silo, but really it was, again, what industry and what the profession needs to advance. Now, one of the questions that was asked of from the Respiratory Care Board, well, what is the difference in terms of the outcomes? So from an educational standpoint, we have to look at course outcomes and how they connect to then program and final outcomes, and of course how that fits in with the mission of the college. So when we look at an associate degree program, its sole purpose is really to have practitioners enter the field, and the focus really is patient care. And so a very high clinical component that we see in this process. Now, when we look at the bachelor's program at Skyline and Modesto Junior College, we chose to go to the track of what's next if we step away from the bedside. Okay? And so this now really is a ladder, and it provides them those opportunities and advancement. And most of those pieces are really in leadership positions in our profession. So we're looking at advanced level practitioner, researchers, case managers, supervisors, managers, directors, and educators. And again, as they move through, they're moving through the curriculum in a project-based manner. I give just an example of the list of people that have really applied their expertise and are now faculty with the program. And so I just wanted to give you a flavor of one of our challenges that we've had is in the Bay Area, anybody who lives certainly within the Bay Area, but more so outside of the Bay Area, cannot relocate to the Bay Area. It's extremely expensive. And one of the things the college has done is we've invested in a full-time faculty member just for the bachelor's degree program, we've not been able to hire that person because of the pay from the public system and just the relocation. And I continually have conversations that, I really love to come up there. It's beautiful. I'd love to contribute. And then I looked at what housing costs. Conversation stops there. Having said that, everybody who's on that list there, I didn't put the names down, but I put their affiliations. They're all part-time. They are either currently working or they've just retired, but they bring a wealth of expertise to the program. And the students are finding such a great benefit just from the experience. And I would say hundreds of years of experience if we look at that list of people who bring that expertise. Program design. I want to talk just a little bit about the program design. We understand that our students who come into the bachelor's degree program, it is a laddering program, a degree completion program, a 2+2 program. In that, students who come into the program must be licensure eligible and must have completed an equivalent of an associate degree. And we were very specific to say it in that manner because if we said they must be licensed in the state of California or they must have an Associate of Science degree in respiratory care, we may lose a lot of students who may not have met the requirements as they are exactly stated right now. So one of our goals was to create open access and be able to help all practitioners in the state of California get to a bachelor's degree if that's what their ultimate goal was. Okay. So we're looking at working adults. Currently, cohort number 1 started in fall of 2016. I'll talk about the demographics in just a couple of minutes. And cohort number 2 started in fall of 2017. And those were launched as hybrid programs, which means 50% of the curriculum is online and 60% of the curriculum is live. So students are meeting once a week for about 6 hours, and we're pairing 2 courses at a time, 2 3-unit courses at a time, over a 9-week period. We decided to do that so that we could get 2 9-week terms in a traditional semester. That allows a student to become full-time and allows them the maximum possibility of gaining financial aid should they need it. And I'll be sharing a little bit of statistics in that way. It has its pluses and minuses. We have not developed yet a part-time program, so we've not been able to serve those students yet, and we're trying to figure out how to do that. We've included project-based instruction, and while we do not have a clinical component in this program, students are bringing their patients into the classroom, their experiences into the classroom, and faculty are doing that as well. And they're going back out into their hospitals, institutions, and employment institutions, and really taking that information out and bringing that information back in, of course, following HIPAA regulations as we must. The faculty align their content areas, and we pair the 2 courses, and we require faculty to create at least 2 assignments that cross over both of their courses. So that from a student's perspective, it is very relevant in their understanding how the coursework fits together. And then the program ends in a culminating capstone project. The next slide here I show is just what that pattern looks like, and I thought it was important to share that with you because as you look at the pairing, we were very cognizant about what would align with each other so that students could align what their major coursework is in respiratory care. And then also we have 5 courses that are upper division GE so that students are getting a broader perspective. And I think that that is one of the things, if we look at the 15 programs that have launched, the minimum requirement is only 3 courses of upper division coursework. We chose 5 because our students already come in lower division coursework with tons of major coursework. In our program, they complete about 50 units of respiratory care by the time they get to the bachelor's degree. And students have found the GE tremendously helpful. And if I go down the list, I'll tell you which ones are the GE. Health communications, public health policy, multicultural human relations, medical ethics, and intersectionality and citizenship. And I have to say the feedback that we've gotten so far is, why do we have to do, these aren't related to respiratory care. They have really enjoyed the coursework and it has really broadened their perspective. And I think that really provides this greater layer and understanding for the future leaders in this profession. This is just a slide just to let you know that, it's not, hey, we've got everything, let's just add another track. And the college has been very cognizant of providing the support. And so we've gotten that support for the bachelor's degree program, which has made it successful so far. All right, here are our students. The first bachelor's degree cohort started in fall of 2016. We had 42 people apply, 33 were accepted, and 29 started. And I wanted to give you a flavor of, well, where did they graduate from their associate degree program? We know they live locally right now, but if we look at it, the majority certainly live in the, trained in the Bay Area, but we have about 30% that have come from, 20%, 25% that have come from Southern California. So certainly there is a demand, and I think the other piece I wanted to show you is we've been very cognizant that not everybody comes out of the community college system or from a private college, and so we've been very aware and wanted to make sure we didn't create barriers for students regardless of what program they came from. Accredited programs are accredited programs, and we take that coursework as one lump sum as they come into the bachelor's degree. You'll see at the bottom of the screen that the diversity of our population is very diverse, and the legislative office and the legislature is very interested to make sure that we are serving all Californians, and I think that we've met that challenge. And then the last piece on this slide, if you look at the bottom right-hand side, of our students, these are, again, I would say 95% of them currently have positions, and they're still qualifying and getting financial aid. And so for this first cohort, $66,000 has either been provided by mostly Pell or Board of Governor waivers for tuition. So it's really again, a test to how the program's developed. Students are going full-time because they can benefit from financial aid, and then we get them through and out quicker, which is really great. And then the last piece at the bottom, you'll see that what I put in terms of the dates is people who are in this cohort have been practicing since 1974 up until 2016 when that cohort started. So a wide variety of students coming back for their education. And then this is our second cohort, which started in the fall in 2016. Only 23 applied, and I'll talk about that in a second. We accepted 20, and 16 actually started the program. I'm going to go back one slide. When we look at the first cohort, 29 had enrolled. They will be finishing their curriculum this semester. We have 24 students who are slated to graduate. So if we look at, again, the retention and success, I think that things are going extremely well in terms of that piece and providing that support so they can get through. Our second cohort, much smaller. We started out with 16. We have about 12, maybe 13. We're still figuring out the one. Why people have left? It's usually, again, that they're working, they have lives outside, so we're trying to figure out how to help. Again, you can see the right-hand side and where they did their entry-level education. And for this cohort, we have a range from starting practice in 1988 till now. All right, last piece I'm going to talk about in terms of, I think one of the things that really helps students in the next trajectory of their professional career is a Capstone Project course. So while we don't do clinicals, we do project-based learning, and so they will perform a capstone project in which they identify a problem and issue. They perform an extensive literature review that's going to inform the project that they do, and then they create and conduct that plan, and they produce that product, whatever it is. And that product could be a training for patients. It could be training for staff. It could be development of curriculum. It could be research. It could be any number of things. What are they doing? Well, our first cohort is just embarking, and actually next weekend they will start to figure out what it is that they want to do and refine that. However, at the end of last year, we polled them and we asked them what kinds of things do they want to do. And so I just wanted to give you just the different types of projects that they were thinking about a year ago. And as you can see, as you look at that, it's varied. And the hope is, and I think it will come to fruition, is that they're thinking about what they want to do, that problem that they see currently in the institution that they're working with, and do some sort of meaningful work that's not shelved, and it's something that's going to benefit their institution, it's going to benefit their region, it's going to benefit Californians. And when they do their presentations, we've decided, and we're now starting to work on this, that we are going to break them up into 4 groups, and they're going to be presenting it in institutions all around the Bay Area, northern, western, eastern, and southern. And we will invite the community so that they can see that work, and then that work can be shared across the region. Okay. We are looking at starting Cohort 3, and that will launch in fall of 18. And in fall of 18, we're going to go fully online. So now it will reach all of Californians, and preference will be given to residents of California. If there are any seats left, we'll open it up to outside of the state. So I'll go back to the cohort where I said it was very small. The comment we continually got is people knew we were going to start the online program, and so a lot of them didn't apply, and we anticipate we'll have a full cohort with a wait list. We've heard that demand. We're getting calls every single day. We'll find out at the end of May when the application process closes how many applications we get. I predict we're going to have quite a few. With that said, I will open it up for questions, comments.
I want to thank you for you and everyone else's hard work to move this forward. It's a major step for the respiratory care profession in California, and I hope that these 2 programs become beacons for more use within the community college system once they see how successful these programs can be. So thank you. I will, if you will stay there, and I just want to just contrast the Modesto program to Dean Hernandez's program to basically talk a little about the differences between the 2. Although much communication came forward for both programs to be similar, they are not the same. And one of the things that was very important for the program was the requirement of the transferability and the requirement for UC and CSU requirements for those students that had gotten an associate degree in MJC but had not completed the requirements for transfer. So the first program you started in 2016, we were unable to start the program in 2016 because not enough students had completed the 11 courses that were necessary in order to enter the baccalaureate program. So the first cohort for MJC started in 2017. There were 42 people that had completed all the requirements in order to enter the program. When the selection process finally finished, there were 24 people who said, I do and I will start. And the first day of class, 22 actually showed up. And the current cohort has 19 students. The students that have left the program have left for non-academic reasons and are getting ready to pursue the next class that will start in the fall of 18 to come back into the program. The program is a hybrid, which is the same 1 day a week, and the same situation has occurred relative to the feedback from other therapists and other people in the program and the people in the associates program to say, we would like to go forward to become a fully online program. MJC has decided to do a second cohort as a hybrid. So essentially working out the kinks relative to the programming. Also, as in your program, there is no clinical component to the program because there is no availability for advanced practice within the Central Valley and beyond. But what was important to emphasize in the program, as Dean Hernandez has said, the other elements of the three levels of the stool for Cohort being research and management and education, we wanted to make sure in the program the students got advanced technical opportunities to learn about opportunities within respiratory care without getting any clinical opportunity to do that. Also with the cohort for the students, I was saying relative to there are 3 of the students in the first cohort that are within 2 years of graduation, and the average of the rest of the students in the cohort are between 15 and 20 years. So it's almost similar to Skyline's program. But what's important about it is that the emphasis on MJC for first generation students to be able to have completed their associate's degree and to go on to be part of the bachelor's program was extremely important relative to those people in the program to be able to go back and speak to the community about the opportunities for respiratory care so that more people can understand that option. Now, in the governor's address just last week, he spoke a little about, California online idea for all of California. And again, we don't have enough outcome work yet relative to the programs in the cohort. But I think that moving forward, we will have enough to show that things are positive and we'll be able to continue these programs beyond the 2022 date in which the pilot program is scheduled to end, that it can be moved forward to 2028, and then we could have outcome data and be able to potentially expand the role of respiratory care within the community college system, because it's very important relative, as you said, for those people who are working, employed, but also to be able to be affordable and be able to get aid when necessary. So, I think that the group that developed the curriculum and looked at the curriculum and looked at what was important, the point of the professional societies, the employers, the other therapists who were in the program, to be able to have input in the curriculum was extremely important, to be able to get a program that people wanted to be part of. So I want to thank everyone relative to that and the success that will happen relative to the respiratory program moving forward in the baccalaureate program and potentially even beyond that for advanced practice. So thank you. Any comments from the audience? Any questions they would like to ask of either of us? Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 5, the interim legislative action policy. And one of the things about this item is about the ability of the Respiratory Care Board to take action on issues that have its immediacy and to be able to consult and to look at issues that are important to the Respiratory Care Board, the community, the therapists, and we meet a certain number of times a year, but we need to be able to be available as far as the executive committee to be able to help out whether or not there are legislative hearings or decisions that need to be made. And this is a way to be able to facilitate decision-making for the board to move things along. Sometimes with legislative hearings, the amount of time given from the time that they say, okay, there's going to be a hearing tomorrow at 1 o'clock in order to be able to get, people together and to be able to get a statement together or to be able to give testimony together. So this is a way in which the executive committee can get together and make decisions rapidly in reference to the board. Stephanie, would you like to add two things relative to that?
No, but I think that's good. It's in between board meetings, and it's the same thing we've had. It's just a revise and an update.
What prompted a revise or update? Don't you form this activity anyway, or you want to formalize it?
Microphone, please.
Oh, it's way over. I can't get it.
So the question was, don't we already do this? Are we just wanting to formalize it? And in response, it's something that we had before, but it was a very old policy. And it's basically the board's giving permission to the executive committee to make these decisions in between board meetings, but to ensure that they always bring them back to the board to codify them. So you're officially giving them permission to do that. Otherwise, we have to wait until the next board meeting, which may be too late to take action.
Now, I asked our legal expert whether this is common with other boards. Is this permitted under the B&P code? I know we've done it, but it seems like you want to formalize it. I have concerns when the board isn't involved in certain areas, and I know we have to wait, but there's ways of working around that with telecoms, whatever. But could I have your opinion about this?
So you do have a concern about the board being able to delegate authority to a couple members to specifically exceed that would be the executive committee to make decisions on legislation as far as supporting it or. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
So the executive committee is you and Tom. That's it. So it's two people along with the executive director. That's my question.
So and then there's concern whether there's authority for that. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't know if there's authority for that.
I mean, if that has been a policy that's been in place and that the board has delegated it, I don't see a problem with it. I mean, I like to do a little bit more research on that before I get back to you on that question, just to see specifically if there's something in the board statute. I haven't seen that yet, but I do want to take some time to research it before.
Well, and I don't mean to be an obstructionist. I just want to be clear that the types of things that executive committee can do without board consent, and the types of things that the board needs to be informed and take a vote on. So those are my concerns, okay? I just bring them up. What's gone in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's okay. It's a pattern of practice, right? So, Stephanie?
Things are brought back to the board.
But you've already made a decision on them, is what I'm understanding. Or am I
Well,
not understanding this?
Some of the things relate, as I said, about whether or not there's like a legislative hearing, and all of a sudden there needs to be testimony, or there needs to be
Oh, well, that's
those kind of things, or
Yeah, it's generally to take a support or opposition to a bill, and if it comes up suddenly, you can't go testify. You can't do anything.
no, it's not those type of things, because those are, you just said you represent us, the community, So,
But if you guys haven't taken a position on the bill, then we can't do anything.
right, you can. I just don't
And
want
if
that
that's-
to happen. If we hadn't taken a position on the bill.
Okay, I mean,
Am I making myself clear? Am I?
yeah, I think you're saying you want the board to authorize all opposition or support of bills.
Well, I would like the board to see it. Yes, I would. We do that in another board. That we do come together and we may change from watch to oppose if amend. And we're now not having the ability to do that. So we have other opinions, and I'm just concerned, and I'll leave it like that. So everyone deal with it, Fred. Okay? I'm just putting it on you.
Understood.
You know, I think, you know, one of the checks and balances about this is that, yes, we may give testimonial, we may say that we're, you know, opposed to something or agree with something or wait till with amendment, okay? But all that stuff comes back to the board, and that is still voted on by the board relative to legislative issues, and we discussed the legislative issues in the meetings, and we listen to say, okay, we agree with the position that we will agree with this and support this legislation, or we'll oppose this, or we'll watch it. So I think that this is just in order to be able to facilitate issues that come up between board meetings, rather than trying to make it seem like trying to bypass the board. We're not bypassing the board, but we're just facilitating decision-making in the time between the board meetings.
So, currently we have the policy in place, the old policy, so I think, unless there's more public comment, we need a motion to either rescind the old policy, to do nothing, or to adopt the proposed one.
Oh.
I make a motion to propose that the proposed revised policy be adopted.
Second.
I had a public comment.
Yes, come forward, please.
My name is George Garcia. I'm from Mission Hospital, and although I'm not representing Mission Hospital, I'm here as a respiratory therapist, and wanted to provide a comment regarding this proposal. I think that the change is in the interest of efficiency, and I think that's a good thing. We have this type of situation at our hospitals as well, where we have certain policies and procedures that we, from time to time, have to revise. And we do have a pathway that allows us to make changes to small things. For instance, if it is at a level of clarification to, maybe the way the sentence was written, and it doesn't change the intent of the policy, just rephrasing the sentence, or if there is maybe a spelling error. Those are some types of changes that we're allowed to make, and without the having to go through the approval of the various committees and boards that we have to have a policy go through. But it's very clearly lined out, and perhaps what in this situation is probably the same thing. There's probably maybe a suggestion to maybe clearly spell out those things that you are wanting to have this approval before the board meets. And that way, there are certain things that perhaps may require approval from the board, or maybe there's certain things that may fall under this, this proposed change. So that's just my suggestion.
I have a question. When the executive staff meets on such issues, I would assume that the legislative staff from Consumer Affairs is involved in clarification of what's being discussed or what changes are being made, and they have been the ones following the bills in the first place. Is that correct?
Generally, no. They do follow all the bills for us, but it depends on which staff you're assigned. Sometimes you get somebody who provides real-time updates, and sometimes we don't hear from them. So they're kind of, I'm not really sure what their role is. So they're not usually involved. Generally, it has to do with, as stated in the policy, it's either to advance something that's our goals and mandate, or oppose something that goes against it. So it's not something outrageous that we're pulling out of thin air. It's something that the board has kind of had a theme or motion.
I think a really good example that's actually going to be covered under the next item was when AB 387 came about last year. It was to for the minimum wage to pay healthcare professionals as part of clinical. That was something that came about shortly after our March meeting, and we, it was brought to our attention, and then we conversed with both Alan and Tom. That was one that we needed to oppose because it was in direct conflict with our mandate. I'm sorry, with the statute, the education statute. So that's a good example. They're rare. I mean, because it has to be something that's fairly significant. As you know, a lot of times we just watch a lot of bills. But that one happened to be something that we felt strongly needed to be opposed at that time. But again, they don't happen very often. It really, really doesn't.
Right, and I think the guidelines and the policy does provide some sort of restrictions as far as the committee, what the committee can and cannot support. It's not giving them carte blanche, if that's my understanding. Right?
And it is legislative action, not general. And if you remember last year when we did the forum for the strategic plan, and we were talking, we had community members and other people, and we did all the work. We voted and agreed that small changes or wording or other things could come through the executive committee to make it for clarity or otherwise. That didn't have to come. The strategic plan, in the growth sense, did not have to come back to the board for another meeting. So I think it's those kind of things specifically. So,
But you state that, if I'm wrong, as you agree to that bill proposal, you state in the language and any changes that the staff needs to make. I mean, it's just.
You should turn it on.
Well, I had the laryngitis, so it's like. Where was I? I don't remember. We state that any changes the staff needs to make, as we agree with that legislation, is permitted, and that's what the board says. And any other minor changes or grammatical changes or changes to make it better, we give you permission. We hand it over. But I personally am not comfortable with legislation that we may not have seen first. So that's my warning. But I understand your position. I'm not going to belabor it anymore. But usually we get to look at it as a board, and not just because it's in a hurry. There are ways of getting around that. So, okay, how do you turn this on?
Just a comment to Dr. Lewis, or on his subject. Would it be possible that, I know these things come up quickly, and obviously we can't meet that often. Would it be possible to maybe email us out the legislation, give us 3 days to make comments on it?
That you need a meeting for that.
Oh, it has to be a meeting?
There's a provision where for legislation you could have a special meeting, which is a 10-day notice. But again, that's obviously up to the board to decide how they want to proceed.
It has to be an open meeting. Is it open meeting?
It's, yes, it does. It's a special meeting.
Yeah.
The notice is shorter.
So they can't just send us out the information and so we can look at it before?
Because the public must have a right to go ahead and comment.
Vaguely came. Okay, all right, thank you. That clears that up.
Okay, so we currently have a motion here by Tom that was second, yes?
It looks like this primarily, I mean, we've been doing it instead of doing it already, it looks like it just cleans up a bunch of verbiage. Mark, like,
Just turn it on. Turn that one in front of you on, please.
they turn on. Okay.
Thank you.
It looks like it primarily cleans up existing language. It doesn't really provide an increase in authority. Those are all really good points that are raised. But I was wondering if, at this point, is there a possibility to call for the question?
That means you want to end discussion.
Right, it does.
Any public comment from the audience before we call the question and vote on the proposal? Would you like to restate the proposal?
I make a motion that we adopt the interim. I can do this on page.
Robert, are we doing Robert's Rules of Order? When he calls for the question, then we vote on whether we want to stop any further
That's
comment.
true, that's true.
First, before you vote on it. We're doing Robert's Rules. That's the difference. Okay?
They need to take a break.
Okay. 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 We'll 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes recess.
That's it.
Back into session. And our legal counsel has a statement to make before we move further along in this.
Yes, just want to clarify a little bit what I just said. There's a provision in the law that allows for a meeting for the board to discuss pending legislation with a 48-hour notice. However, I do want to add that sometimes there may be cases where the board may be asked to testify or take position on certain legislation that may be shorter than that amount of time. So certain boards and groups may delegate their authority, but I guess in this case the board has delegated its authority, so there's a discussion. And I'm assuming, from what I'm hearing so far, the motion is regarding that, whether the board should either renew that policy or revoke it, right? Or modify it. Or amend it.
Right. Amended.
That's the issue at hand, right? Okay. Just want to verify.
Someone's calling questions.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask to rescind my call for the question and suggest a friendly amendment. The amendment being that once an action is taken, that the board members are informed immediately of the action. Thank you.
Email. Like an email, just to let us know.
Yeah.
So the policy, so the motion is to adopt the current policy with an amendment to that policy, correct? Okay.
Is that okay?
That's fine. I mean, like it's just a policy of the board, so you can amend it however you want. I just want to make sure that it's clear and it's understood by everyone.
Yes.
So I think we need Tom to amend his policy if he chooses to do so to that, and we need a second to that.
All right. I would like to motion that we adopt the revised policy on interim legislative action and include the amendments suggested by Mark.
I second.
Did you second the first one?
Oh, no, that's right, the seconder has to.
I second,
So
I second, yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you for Robert's rules.
Any public comment on this issue? Seeing that there is none. Ready to
Okay.
vote?
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Rebecca Franzoya,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein,
Aye.
Michael Hardiman,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Finally, aye.
Judy McKeever,
Aye.
Sam isn't here, Vice President Wagner,
Here. Aye.
and President Rao.
Aye.
Right.
So, the motion carries with its amendment.
Thank you for your indulgence.
Always,
Oh,
you make sure that I am true to Robert's rules.
right.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is number 6, legislation of interest. Christine?
Yes, this is kind of a short report because we're meeting a little earlier than we normally do in the calendar year. So there were 2 bills that were being carried over because this is the second year of the 2-year legislative cycle. And I was just providing an update. Those are the ones identified on the first page, AB 387 and SB 715. Since we mailed the agenda, there has been an update to AB 387. The bill has officially died. Which is a good thing from our perspective because, as I mentioned earlier, we did take an opposed position because it directly conflicted with our statute. SB 715, we will continue to watch. It's been in the Assembly inactive file since September, so we're really not sure what's going to happen with that bill. Again, though, we will continue to watch it. And there are 2 other bills that we would like you to consider. Our recommended position from a staff perspective is to watch, and they just have to do with some of the actually items that are on the agenda today. SB 769 involves the baccalaureate degree pilot program, and it is basically a bill to extend those provisions. And SB 1793 has to do with cannabis convictions. And I know Stephanie is going to be providing some additional information later as to how the legalization of recreational cannabis, may impact licensed activities. And so anything relating to that, we would like to keep an eye on.
Judy, yes.
So I just have a question on Senator Hill's SB 769, considering the bachelorette degree pilot program. Why would we not be for this? Is it that the language isn't clear yet, or what is the reason we're just watching it? Because I would think this would definitely be to our benefit, to the benefit of respiratory care practitioners.
Oh, well, we
Yeah,
can
we
take that
can,
position.
yeah.
It was a little bit outside of our purview, but given the presentation that we had today, I feel like that seems appropriate.
So would you like to
Make a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we are in favor of SB 769's the baccalaureate degree pilot program.
Second.
public comment?
Well, board
Board comment. Thank you.
Christine, any issues with this right now? You see this as
No, I definitely think it's a positive thing. I know that the board has been in support of the bachelor's degree pilot program, so this just gives a little bit more flexibility from a time perspective.
It also goes a little bit, it goes along with what the LAO suggested about
Right.
extending.
Right,
So,
right.
In the report that we were provided, so I think it's beneficial.
oh, it's all pilot programs, right?
Correct.
All the programs within the 15 that were approved from. So it's all, not just the respiratory program, it's all of the 15
Yeah.
programs.
Most of them are healthcare related.
And I'll just make one other comment. One of the things that was a part of the report related to the fact that there was not outcome data to be able to move forward in a positive or a negative way. So not trying to cancel the pilot program when it was supposed to end in 2022. There would be very few cohorts that actually have graduated, and so they wouldn't have enough data. So this is a way to potentially extend that period of time, so there will be outcome data.
Okay. Did you get a second?
There was a second. Who was it?
Public comment. Seeing none? Oh, yes, come, sorry,
No problem.
You have to come forward.
come forward, please.
It makes absolute sense to extend the pilot program, given that you don't have enough data. So I think it is a valid point for you to extend the pilot program, and then obviously you'd have more data to make a more educated decision versus yay or nay.
There are 121 community colleges within the state of California. And obviously this was a pilot of 15 of those programs. So, as I said, most of them are health related, but there are other areas that maybe were not mentioned in the initial grouping of things. And as things change, there may be other areas of education for other fields that may need to have to go into that. So can we now have any other further questions? Any hands I did not see? Okay. Let's have.
Okay, Mary Ellen Early. Aye. Rebecca Franzoya. Aye. Mark Goldstein.
Aye.
Mike Hardiman.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Judy McKeever. Sam Kabusha.
Aye.
Vice President Wagner.
Aye.
And President Rob.
Aye.
Moving on then for SB 1793, is there agreement to watch? Stick with the staff recommended position of watching?
Yes, I make a motion to watch that legislation.
Okay.
Second.
Comment from other members of the board. Any public comment?
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Mary Ellen Early.
Aye.
Rebecca Franzoya.
Aye.
Mark Goldstein.
Aye.
Mike Hardiman.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Judy McKeever. Aye. Sam Kabusha. Vice President Wagner.
Aye.
And President Rob.
Aye.
Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item 7, board-sponsored legislation. The item A is the proposal to amend sections 3751, 3753, and 3753.1 of the BMP. And this is a proposal that was already submitted to the board and approved to proceed, and so this is simply an update. We hope to hear something within a couple of weeks here on the acceptance of these proposals. Are there any questions on that? Okay. So
I think it's a very positive step to continued competency and continuing our mandate of public protection for this board.
Okay, and so then we move on to 7B, the proposal to amend 3704 and to add 3702.5 to the Business and Professions Code. This proposal was kind of born out of our strategic plan, practice goal number 2. We, as the board is trying to look at expanding education opportunities or levels of education, we also realized that when we expanded the scope of practice a few years ago, it was to such an extent that you have a myriad of levels of tasks in that. And so we thought it was best to possibly identify your standard task, your medium task, and your advanced tasks. And this legislation that's being put before you right now would do just that. It would allow the board to move to regulations to actually identify different tasks at those different levels. And then should education start to expand further for like the bachelor degrees, we can identify if there are advanced practices in there that we only want bachelor degree people to perform. And I'm open to questions. We do have CSRC, the California Society for Respiratory Care, has looked at this. This was kind of done in January, and so in discussions with them, they went ahead and put the proposal in front of their board members, and they are, I believe, are going to move forward with it, with or without us. But it's a joint thing, something we have in common, a common goal, and so we would like to pursue it with them.
Again, the importance there is to identify tasks, skills, and competencies within our scope of practice to determine the degree of education required and the skill set required in order to be able to do those things. Which will fall in line with the baccalaureate program and their advanced skills, and how Cohort is looking down the road at an advanced practitioner type programs for the future. So,
So I have a question about this. When I read it, does this mean that you would label someone in one of these three degrees by the exam, the state exam? How does this work? And would this limit, say you've got a therapist that's been there 20 years and does advanced things already, would this limit someone who's already trained to do something saying, oh no, you're not number 3, so you can't do that anymore? I mean, I'm trying to understand how this would affect people on the work side.
It's intended to label the tasks and services, not the people. And the actual tasks, and if we start putting caveats on what kind of education you need, those are going to be in regulations that come before the board. And so that's when you would edit however you feel like somebody's being left out that should be qualified to do the performance. But hopefully we don't leave anybody out.
As the profession matures, you know, when the Licensing Act came into being, it grandfathered in people without credential. And as we move forward with credentialing and now requiring on RRT as a licensing requirement, now to further specify skills and activities within the scope of practice for respiratory care, not to exclude therapists within. As a licensed therapist, you're a licensed therapist. There isn't any exclusions as being licensed. So you got your license before and you were non-credentialed, or you got your license before and were just certified. You got your license and you were registered. New people have to be registered, but we did exclude people with prior credentialing from performing respiratory care activities.
So would this exclude new grads? Would this put them into some kind of a box going, oh, you're an A?
No, because they are licensed and they are registered.
Okay, even new grads?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other discussion relative to clarifications for other board members? Any questions for? Yes, come forward, please. Oh.
Yeah,
noticed we're actually putting in the NDRCs. I noticed we're putting in an actual legislation in the NDRC's exams.
So we're referring to item 7A right now. Not this.
Because the prior to, it's current language in the current exam as versus the naming of the old exam. So it's just updating.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
7B.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just have some concerns. It seems that this is drafted in a way that will stymie some of the folks that are certified and not registered by requiring these folks to have, if you're going to practice an advanced procedure or something, it seems as though this kind of relegates them to more, let's just call it floor care, or an intermediate or less type of therapy. Again, omitting them from practicing these advanced procedures, if you will.
As a person who is licensed as a respiratory care practitioner, you are licensed as a respiratory care practitioner. Your competencies within the hospital are related to what your medical director and the medical staff has approved for your particular institution for those skill levels. That is not licensing, that's competency within your institution and how an institution views particular skills that a therapist who is licensed can perform.
And I just want to, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Some of the advanced tasks that may be listed as advanced tasks are things like conscious sedation, ECMO. So I just want you to have kind of an understanding of when we talk about advanced tasks, we're talking about very advanced tasks. So I don't know if that helps.
So bronchoscopies, endobronchial ultrasound, those won't fall under the category of advanced tasks.
I don't think so.
They could, but what we really want to make clear here is a differentiation. As a licensed therapist, there are those skills that require a certain competency and a certain education, and there are certain things that require more. So, if your institution says you're assisting in endobronchial ultrasound, and they say you need 6 hours of educational training and you need an annual competency, okay? Those are the kinds of things that an institution specific will require for you in order to be able to do your job.
And these guidelines won't supersede that, I'm hearing you say.
Right, they'll just differentiate what are skills that require a certain amount of education within respiratory care. Yes?
Hello, Respiratory Care Board. My name is Monique Stefani. I'm the CSRC Government Affairs State Chair. I am also an emergency transport flight and ground therapist at Children's Hospital. Under my current license, I do have the capability of practicing advanced scope of practice. I think for those in the audience, it's very, maybe misunderstanding is coming about right now. Just as our respiratory therapists, CRTs, were grandfathered into the position, I think it's important that they understand that they will also be grandfathered into the scope of practice that's divided into basic, intermediate, and advanced. So the concerns of the audience seem to be just a misunderstanding based on language that is coming across. So am I on the right track, I believe, based on discussions?
As a licensed therapist, you're licensed to practice respiratory care within the scope of practice for California.
Correct.
What a particular institution prescribes you to be able to do is related to the institution, and they're deciding between the medical staff and the medical direction of that particular institution, and not relative to licensing.
So I think, again, like I said, it is important for the audience to understand, as long as we have an RCP, which is what we need to work in the state of California, that will be the exception for you to practice at a basic, intermediate, and advanced scope, as long as you've met the competencies of your facility.
Right.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so we've discussed this, and I can still see some confusion out there on your faces. This proposed legislation only looks at procedures. Okay, is this a procedure that's simple to do, or is this a procedure that is complex to do? This does not put practitioners in a box. Okay, so we're not looking at practitioners, you can do this and you can't do that. That's up to your institution. You're a licensed practitioner. And so we're just looking at tasks. Okay, is this a busy task or is this a simple task? You know, yada, yada, yada. And so that's the only thing we're doing here. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Allison, I'm President of the California Society for Respiratory Care. On January 15th, the CSRC Board of Directors voted unanimously to support this piece of legislation. And our plan is to be in Sacramento on Tuesday to advocate for this legislation. As of yet, we do not have an author for the legislation or a bill number, but that may happen even by the time we get there on Tuesday. We believe that this proposed legislation would ensure appropriate education and training for the three distinct levels of practice: basic, intermediate, and advanced, based on market conditions. The respiratory care field and the health care facilities have identified higher education and respiratory care has become more prevalent and continues to grow. Higher education is needed as a result of the recent continuing expansion of practice in California and nationally through the work of the AERC and other organizations. And this is a responsible approach to identifying safe practice standards surrounding the practice of respiratory care in California. There are a number of market drivers that are having an influence here. In October, during his opening address, the new president of the American College of Chest Physicians, at their annual conference in Toronto, announced that they expect to have a shortage of pulmonologists between now and 2025. So there will be a distinct need for respiratory therapists and other well-trained clinicians to start to fill roles or start to train to fill roles as physician extenders to help fill that gap. There's simply not enough students going into the pipeline, so that in 2025 there's going to be a shortage of pulmonologists. This is an area where respiratory therapists are well suited to start working towards. The AERC has set a goal of moving towards an APRT, an advanced practice. And so in order to do that safely and uniformly, we feel that this board needs to have the authority to set some regulatory limits, some regulatory thresholds on some of these new functions and new expectations that will be coming down the road. So we view this as forward-looking as opposed to reverse-looking, and preparing the situation here in California so that it can adapt quickly and easily to the new requests that will be coming down the road. I'm happy to answer any questions if I could.
I have one question. So, if this goes through, I'm a little confused. Will someone be labeled as, level A, level 2, level 3? Or is it strictly by education?
It's my understanding that the tasks will be labeled, and in order for someone to perform that task, they'll have to have a minimum training level to do so.
Which is provided by your
provided by the facility, provided under one of the provisions under Senate Bill 525, which we co-sponsored a couple of years ago was that allowed the institution to train and maintain the clinical competencies of their staff to do procedures above and beyond what's stated in the Practice Act. That's another episode. And I'll use an example. UCSD Medical Center, the Respiratory Care Department, has now taken over responsibility for the interventional bronchoscopy lab. And so that was also provides or requires the administration of deep or conscious sedation. And so they are training their staff to do that. They're maintaining their competencies to do that. There are other hospitals that, in addition to their ECMO responsibilities, they're now performing cell saver responsibilities in the OR for the open heart surgery patients because they're using the same types of equipment. And so a lot more of this will be coming along as the practice expands and grows. And those market drivers, the schools are finally starting to catch up. There's still work to do there. There's 38 schools. For many years we had only one school that provided BSRT. Now we're up to 6 schools. So Senate Bill 850 has stimulated a lot of that. So in order to keep step with that, it would be good for this board to have the authority to, through regulation, to be able to move quickly and make sure that things aren't going crazy.
So I have one more question. So would this discourage hospitals from putting brand new grads in the ICU by themselves? Because where I've worked, I've seen that happen, and patients have had bad effects. And I understand the new grads need to go in the ICU, but I always thought that they should be with someone experienced, someone that's advanced. And where I was working, they would just put 2 new grads in the ICU by themselves, and the nurses would be calling me on my phone where I was assigned somewhere else. So could this in any way prevent them from doing that? Because I think it's dangerous.
I would say perhaps requiring that preceptors be registered therapists might be a better way, so that a preceptor goes with the new grad, so that you have instead of a new grad precepting a new grad, you have a registered therapist with some experience.
Yeah, no, we do have that preceptorship, but it's not. Our preceptorship is not long enough. And you spend 1 week in each ICU, and then you're set free. And that can't cut it. You can't know the cardiac, the neuro, the med surg. You can't know all that stuff in 1 week with a person. But could this in some ways tell the hospitals, no, you need to have an experienced therapist in with the new grad until they
proposal is
to level.
intended to affect students.
No.
Yeah, and it would be the hospital's risk profile, and I cannot speak to that.
Okay.
Again, to state that it's related to tasks, it's related to getting skill levels, okay, and it's also to look forward relative to specific things for Cohort when it's looking for advanced practice. It's looking at Joint Commission when they come by the hospital and want to know why someone can do something and another person cannot. So, but it's still individual institutions that determine the activities of a particular therapist within the medical staff, the medical direction, the medical executive board. Those are the hurdles, and what this does in some way is allows them to understand the scope of practice for respiratory care.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
My name is George Garcia. Again, I'm a respiratory therapist here in Orange, California. This subject is very interesting, and just from my perspective as a manager, I just wanted to be clear on this intent. I think it's a great intent. And right now, I believe there's only one organization that currently does board certifications for respiratory therapy, and that's the National Board for Respiratory Care. The National Board for Respiratory Care requires individuals that have gone through a program to take a test, and based on their test score, it will determine whether they're a CRT, and it's my understanding that the board certification for certified respiratory therapist is entry level, and it's defined by those tasks. The RRT is when you set a score above the CRT score, then you go to an RRT, which is the Advanced Respiratory Therapist Board Certification, so it's RRT board certification. And then they do provide other certifications that are board certifications that look at these advanced practice competencies, such as the neonatal pediatric specialist board certification. There is adult critical care specialist board certification. There's the sleep disorders specialist board certification. There's a registered coronary function technologist board certification. So these are these advanced competencies that are already regulated by another entity, and they are recognized nationwide. And so when I take a look at this proposed legislation, it does concern me that if this is something that we legislate, that those board certifications may now be a requirement, because I'm sure that the Respiratory Care Board may look to this organization to determine what is entry level, what is advanced level, and these other advanced competencies. And if that's the case, then we are going to have many respiratory therapists that have not been maintaining those board certifications. Now, the board certifications do expire, and upon licensure here in the state of California, they are required to have their board certification. But upon renewal, that is not a requirement for renewal of that license. So many of the respiratory therapists out there have not renewed those board certifications, and so if the legislative intent here, I'll be concerned that we're going to have many of those respiratory therapists that are going to have to go back and get those board certifications, and the rules have changed over time, and it's become more difficult for them to get those board certifications. I do encourage all staff members that work with me to maintain those board certifications, but there are some respiratory therapists that have not maintained those board certifications, so they would have to probably go back to school to renew those board certifications. So, and you're right, the hospitals do have job descriptions, and the job descriptions will define those competencies that are required for that particular job. So.
Just to clarify, since 2005, all credentials maintained by the NBRC for an individual has to be part of the CCC program in order to keep their credential. But it is not a requirement of the Respiratory Care Board to maintain that credential. It's to earn that credential and become licensed.
Yes.
It should be, but and how an institution determines who can do what task. If they determine that in order to work in the nursery you need an MPS, that's an individual institution that's determining that. If it's in the ICU, it's the ACCS credential. If it's sleep, it's the SDS. So individual institutions will move forward with deciding what you need aside from your RRT in order to be able to work in particular specialty areas.
Okay. So we've gotten deep into discussion, and we've gotten deep into the discussion. We don't have a motion yet, so I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with a proposal to add the sections on the scope of practice amendment and amend sections 3704 of the Business and Professional Code as co-sponsored with California side to secure the placement of a legislative bill and grant the executive committee authority to make interim changes as necessary.
Second.
Board comment? Comment from the audience? Step.
Can you come up?
My name is Bob Demers. Until recently, I served as the regional respiratory care educator for Southern California Permanente Medical Group. And Judy's point is well taken. I'll give you a real world example. Most of the practicing respiratory care practitioners in Southern California that wanted to become NICU trained, I ran the NICU training for those folks. We had a new grad enter the NICU training. And echoing Judy's concern, I said, this guy's a new grad. He wants to go right into the NICU. No legislation covers that. But what we did is, when I voiced my concern, somebody said to me, he's finished his competencies. He sailed through his competencies. That's the litmus test, I believe. It turned out this guy was white light. Even though the average seniority of respiratory therapists practicing in NICU was 6 to 8 to 10 years, sometimes new grads are especially bright. So it doesn't relate to legislation. It relates to competency. That always has to be our baseline.
Thank you. Any further comments? Are we ready?
Okay.
I second your motion.
It's already been seconded.
Okay.
I have made the motion in regard to support the proposal of the scope of practice amendments to 3702 and 3704, and to secure placement of a legislative bill and grant the executive committee authority to make interim changes as necessary. Seconded by Dr. Lewis.
Ready? Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Rebecca Francoya,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein,
Aye.
Mike Hardiman,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Aye.
Judy McKeever,
Aye.
Sam Kabushia, Vice President Wagner,
Aye.
and President Rob.
Aye. We now move on to item number 8 on the agenda, consideration of and possible action to adopt proposed regulatory amendments to section 1399.395 of Division 13.6 of Title 16 of the California Code of Regulations to increase fees. Okay, discussion.
Or did you just make that?
No, it's just.
It just came out.
That's the item.
Okay.
So moved.
I second.
Is there a motion?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Motion. Dr. Lewis motion.
And what's the motion? To adopt the proposed regulatory amendments
As presented?
as presented in this title.
And who seconded? Mark.
Board discussion. Any discussion from the audience, public comment? Yes.
I just wanted to comment that there is another organization called California Children's Services that does have requirements for level 1 level 2 and level 3 neonatal respiratory therapists, and the California Children's Services does require formal training in the neonatal intensive care unit, along with a certain certification. So just wanted to point that out as well.
Any further comment from the audience? If not, a vote.
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Rebecca Franzoya,
Aye.
Mark Goldstein,
Aye.
Mike Hardiman,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Aye.
Judy McKeever,
Aye.
Sam Kabushia,
Aye.
Vice President Wagner,
Aye.
and President Roth.
Aye. We'll now move on to item number 9, California Cannabis Implementation Update. Impact from Stephanie, please.
This is for information only. As part of our strategic plan, there was a request to have more information on the new cannabis law, and so presented before you is a brief history of how it's come about and where we're at now. It appears that currently, I think our law covers the use of cannabis well. I don't think any changes are necessary at this point because our law's never been designed specific to a certain code. It's drugs used in a manner dangerous. And if you go to the end of the attachment, we talk about evidence, and we talk about who's kind of heading this up. And the CHP has been, is one of the agencies heading this up on the enforcement method. And they're working with, I believe it's UC San Diego. Yeah, UC San Diego to study the effects of cannabis use and the impairment of driving. And they're looking at different, I know there's a lot of different scientific things going on with how to detect how long it's been in your system so you can make a connection. This is really just for information update, and as we get more updates, I will pass them on to you. But as far as our program goes, we intend to treat marijuana just like alcohol, so if you're using it in a manner dangerous to yourself, that will be to yourself or others, that'll be a violation. There's a lot of hospitals that don't allow the marijuana use, but they're getting federal funds. And employers still have the right to have a no drug or alcohol policy, so they would still have to abide by that hospital's policy.
Just a clarification. In one of the scenarios we talked about, when someone applies for employment and so a drug testing is done, if it comes up positive for cannabis, it's no longer reportable now to someone who has a license. Is that when I'm reading that right?
Yes, I think you pulled out the one scenario that that it does change. You're absolutely right. It's number 5, is it?
No, number 7.
Number 7. Yes, number 7. That is the one difference with alcohol that is no longer there. And then, so you would have to consider. We were talking about this. I don't know how the board members feel. If you go into employment and you're intoxicated with alcohol, and you apply for employment versus having marijuana in your system, I'm not sure.
What I was asking was,
yeah.
Is it still a requirement of the institution to report to the board a positive drug test or prior to employment?
No, not based on our current law now.
It's not based on any law. They don't have to report it.
Okay.
But the alcohol,
They don't have to
alcohol
report
right now.
either.
I think, well, it's grounds for discipline.
Yes.
They don't have to report. It's just grounds for discipline.
No, I was just going to say the pre-employment.
No. Right. The mandatory reporting is if you use while you're already employed by.
Okay. Not as a pre-employment.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, that's.
And marijuana for medical use, that would not come under cannabis, right? That's exempt.
Unless you're on probation.
Okay, if you're on probation,
It's
then
zero.
if you have a medical marijuana card, you cannot. And we don't have drug levels for marijuana, so what's the definition of intoxication?
The definition for purposes of probation is any level. Well, we have cutoff levels that we established through testing.
On marijuana?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean we accept marijuana use. It just means that there's cutoff levels to ensure that it was actual marijuana ingestion.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Right.
Alcohol is pretty clear because it's
Yeah.
We still have cutoff levels for alcohol.
Yeah, and we have confirmatory tests for even after that, but.
Yeah, okay.
Are there tests now to tell when a person last used cannabis?
That's
I
what
don't,
they're
I don't
working
think
on.
there is, right?
No, there is not.
Okay. I mean, I would think if you go in stoned through a pre-employment test, you're pretty stupid.
Present company all excluded. Blanket statement. Thank- so there's no action, there's no need for a motion, it's just information.
Oh, I have one other question. Did we check with the other boards to see what they're doing about the new law? Because that was brought up at the last meeting, I think, by Dr. Lewis.
Oh, this is information provided by our agency.
Okay,
Our
great.
department.
All right, thank you.
I already asked. I will ask again, just to make sure, to keep on the rules of order. Any other public comment on item number 9? Seeing none and no raised hands, we'll move on. Yeah.
Motion for adjournment?
No.
Oh, future agenda. You gotta go on the back page.
Okay.
You're in a hurry.
Public comments for items not on the agenda. Anyone want to make?
I do. I would like the board to consider changing our October meeting from October 19th to October 12th or October 26th. Turns out October 19th is not good for one of our members, so we would like to see if we can reschedule. If you could, can we do that? Is that okay to do? We've got a meeting actually on the agenda. But I can go back to the office and mail it. We can reschedule it that way.
I mean, I think we'll have a meeting for May.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you could keep October 12th or October 26th open, and at our next board meeting, we will see if we can actually move it.
Greg, don't you have someplace to go and you could come back for a break?
Okay, so we will actually be polling you and seeing if that works.
And where is that meeting?
It is, yes, scheduled for Fresno. Fresno.
Awesome.
I think it's a first.
Well, that's good.
Any other public comment on items that were not on the agenda that someone would like to bring up? Seeing none.
Tom is in answer.
Any future items for the agenda? We already have one relative to the meeting. Our next meeting is May 13th.
It's May. And it's in Monterey.
Monterey.
And it's a Monday.
And it's a Monday.
The day after Mother's Day.
The day after Mother's Day. 14th? It's the 14th.
It's the 14th.
I would like to put an item on the agenda to talk about the relationship between respiratory care practitioners and the clinical laboratory as it relates to blood gas reporting information.
Interesting.
Okay, as a discussion, because blood gases are now much more expanded than the items that were initially reported, and there seems to be a question from some institutions, and particularly in in joint commission as to who has the ability to report those, even if it is under the single test that's been done. So I would like to discuss that with people so we have a better understanding, and I'll do some research on that relative to the rules and stuff, but I would like to bring it up. Yes?
Just to further expand on the blood gas situation, we just recently went through a CAP inspection at John Children's Hospital, and according to the regulation given by CAP standards, it is acceptable for any respiratory care practitioner or respiratory therapist in its guidelines to complete an ABG in expanded lab values as long as they have a minimum of an associate's degree, a high school diploma if they've been employed for longer than, I believe, 10 years. But those supervising or doing lab management have to have a minimum of a BSRT or a BS in some type of healthcare management. That's all.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, are we ready for adjournment?
Do we have any other public comments on any other topics? Okay.
Take a break for lunch, then come back.
So moved. So, make a motion for adjournment?
Second.
Yeah. Okay. As long as I keep to the right rules. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your input. It's been very informative. I appreciate it. And so does the rest of the board.
Thanks again to Captain.